Welcome back with On the Road of Recovery. We have Michelle from Illyria here with us. How are you doing today, Michelle?
I'm good, Amber. Thank you.
Good. So I will ask you a few questions. If you'd like, you can pass. But let's just dive right into it. Can you describe your childhood for me?
I can. I actually was born into an alcoholic household. My mother and father were both alcoholics. Thankfully, they did find sobriety, but the first 10 years of my life was as a child of alcoholics and everything that comes along with that.
Was there any kind of traumatic experiences that happened because of that?
Sure. I think anybody who's in active addiction or active alcoholism, even though they may try their best, they're not able to care for other human beings. When we're wrapped up in that selfishness and that self-centeredness, we think that we're doing a good job at parenting, and unfortunately, there's neglect and there's abuse. We were provided for. My father worked hard, my mom worked, but the truth of the matter is that when you are busy drinking and busy obsessing over that alcohol or drug, whatever it might be, you're not able to be emotionally available for your children. So, there were times where I do remember, parties going on and maybe crying and nobody coming right away and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. And what about your friends? How was school and your school life back then?
I never liked school. I was never very good at school. I don't think I ever really got very good grades. I fit in. I think I was fairly popular, but never really had close friendships. I never had the ability to really become deep friends with people. I was superficial. All my friendships were superficial. I could be friendly with everybody, but not actually friends with people.
And let's go deeper in the years. What about high school? When was the first time you started experimenting with drugs and alcohol?
Yeah. So about 10 years old, was like that first drink kind of thing. Between 10 and 14 is when it really became an experimental, recreational. I want to try this. I want to try that. By age 14, it was daily. Whether I was smoking weed, drinking alcohol. I remember one time I had some beers underneath my bed. At 14 years old, I had a bowl with ice cubes in it to try to keep them cold. And I would just sit in my room and chug these beers that really didn't stay cold. They were warm beers by the time I got to them. So I immediately started that addictive behavior.
And then talk about the progression of it.
Sure. The progression of it, ninth grade, 14 is the time where I started daily using. By the time 10th grade hit, I didn't care about anything anymore. So I was a soccer player. I didn't care about that anymore. Matter of fact, I got kicked off the team. I didn't care about friends. I didn't care about family. All I cared about was getting drunk, getting high, partying, hanging out with friends. And I quit school. I didn't care about school anymore. And I had bigger and better things to do as far as my sick mind said, So I left school at 16 years old in 10th grade.
How were you supporting your habit even back then?
I've always been good at talking. I can manipulate. I'm a very practiced manipulator. And it turned into a hustle. I could hustle kids out of their lunch money. I could, hustle people out of cash at stores or outside the stores or friends. I actually grew up in a fairly wealthy neighborhood. So there were a lot of kids who had some money. And I was kind of good at taking it from them.
And then later in life, after high school, you just kept going.
I just kept going. And the drugs got worse, where it was a little bit of weed and a little bit of alcohol and maybe tripping on acid on a Friday night at a football game. By the time I was 18, 19, it was daily crystal meth. And I could not even live without it. I didn't sleep for days at a time. I was losing weight. I was literally killing myself on this drug that my mind and my body said that it needed to survive. But that was the lie, where it was actually killing me.
Would you say you were obsessed?
Obsessed.
Can you talk about the mental obsession?
Yeah. It's survival. And it's literally what our brain does. We have this hind brain that's like that fight or flight. And it's our survival instincts. And when you introduce your brain to those drugs, it literally starts to crave it to survive, the same as we would crave food or crave water. And the obsession to get it pushes you to do whatever you have to do to get it.
Looking back, what did you lose in active addiction?
I lost a lifetime. You're going to make me cry, Amber.
Speaking of crying, did you ever feel alone in this world?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Misunderstood, misinterpreted?
Yes. No matter how many people were around, it was like being in a room all by yourself all the time. And eventually I ended up not even letting people around, and I really was in a room all by myself all the time. Carrying that guilt and that shame and that embarrassment of being a daily drug user really pushed me to just isolate and keep everybody away. My family who loved me and cared about me, I couldn't let them see me that way. So I ended up alone.
Did you ever experience any kind of trauma during your use or even while you were sober now?
Sure. Throughout active addiction, it's like we put ourselves in these positions that it's a recipe for disaster. There were many times where, things got out of hand. There was a hostage situation even at one point where somebody, just sort of lost it and held a group of us hostage. There was sexual things that would go on where, rapes were common between me and the other females that I hung out with. You get yourself in these positions and then bad things happen. And then you blame yourself for putting yourself in that position. Addiction for me was trauma all the way across the board.
Have you ever been diagnosed with any other mental health diseases?
Tons. They started diagnosing me. They started misdiagnosing me as a teenager. And everything from depression and anxiety and bipolar and borderline personality was all misdiagnosed because I wasn't willing to admit that I actually was just a drug user. All of those symptoms are in common with those of mental illness. So my addiction was sort of just overlooked, and they would begin giving me medicine. Prozac to wake up, trazodone to go to sleep, take this mood stabilizer and you'll be okay. When really, all I had to do was stop doing drugs. Let my mind stabilize itself, my emotions stabilize themselves.
So now that you stopped doing drugs, have you seen any, mental health problems for yourself?
No.
No? Okay.
I'm crazy.
Yes.
But in a good way.
Right. Aren't we all?
Amen.
So how long have you been sober now?
This July will be 4 years.
Is this the longest time you've stayed sober?
It's the only time I've ever stayed sober.
Did you have a kind of moment of clarity before you got sober? What was it? What was it like?
Yes, and I guess that goes with the definition of sober. But before I tried to get sober, before I had any idea what this recovery thing was about, I was in jail. And I finally had time for my body to clear out the drugs and my mind to have some clarity of thought and see things in a different light. So there were moments before I really joined the recovery community that I started to have clarity of thought. I started organically working some of the steps that I didn't know that's what I was doing, but at the time it sort of naturally happened.
So how does it feel to be almost 4 years sober?
It feels great. It feels great. This is a good life. This is a life like I never could have imagined, never thought that I would ever have. While using, I thought that was just going to be my life forever. And I did not see a way out. There was no light in that darkness. And to have 4 years of uninterrupted sobriety is literally a miracle.
So what do you do to maintain your sobriety?
I stay busy.
Stay busy.
I stay busy.
Doing.
I literally, and this is what I tell everybody to do, work these steps like your life depends on it, and then start helping other people like your life depends on it, because it does.
And what about your relationships? Have they changed? Do you have a significant other?
I do.
Kids?
I do. Today I have the ability to love and be loved. And that's something that I never had. I never knew what love was. My misconception of love was like perverted and misconstrued. I didn't know what that was until sobriety. So yes, I have a husband. I have literally a half a dozen children, 6 children, and my family unit has been restored through sobriety. Thank God.
And what dreams do you have that otherwise would not have been possible?
To be a decent human being, to be the mom that my kids deserve, to be the wife that my husband deserves. And the biggest one, I think, is to be the daughter that my parents deserve. I stole from them all the memories that they deserved to have with their daughter, graduating high school, going to prom, getting married. Instead, I gave them memories of incarceration and institutionalized, and I stole their peace and their joy. And to be able to finally give them the daughter that they deserve is the biggest reward.
So what do you see in terms of your future?
I would love to tell you what I see in my future, but what I've come to find out is that my future is beyond anything that I can understand. My last 4 years have proven to be beyond my wildest imagination, and I know the next 4 years and next 40 years are going to be beyond anything that I can even think.
You seem happier. Would you consider yourself happier now than yourself?
Yes. And there's a difference. Happy is like, oh, I'm happy. What I have found is joy, pure joy, real joy. Not like, oh, I feel good for a minute because I'm high and I'm going to be hungover later kind of happiness, pure joy, where you can find joy in the most mundane things, find beauty in the world, look around and the sky is bluer and the trees are greener and everything's just beautiful. And there's troubles, there are struggles, but I'm about to start preaching, right? So with God giving me this new perspective, this renewed mind, this restored sanity, I can see things in a different way. He's given me eyes to see beyond the trouble, beyond whatever the issue is or whatever the situation is, and trust in him and have faith in him that he's going to work all things together for my good.
So speaking of feelings, what is your favorite feeling that you have gotten since being sober?
Purpose. Having purpose in life is the greatest fulfilling thing that sobriety has given me. After such a long time of just sort of walking through life, no purpose, no reason, to wake up every morning now and have a purpose keeps me going, keeps me motivated, keeps me determined.
So what is your purpose?
My purpose is to save as many people as I can.
How are you going to do that?
I am never going to shut my mouth. I talk and I talk and I talk. I get to do interviews like this. I get to speak in public. I've gotten to speak to 3,000 people in a stadium. God continues to open opportunities for me to not only share my story, but to share his story. What he has done for me, which has created this life and created this gratitude that then in turn keeps me working for him, is the cycle.
If you could choose one thing that you are most proud of in sobriety, what would it be?
Preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Awesome. So what does a typical day for Michelle look like?
It's crazy. Especially this last year. This last year has been wild for everybody. Like I said, I have 6 kids. 5 of them were in school, 1 preschooler. So I homeschooled 5 children with a preschooler running around bored, wanting to know what to do with her life. But what this year gave me, it literally restored the year that I lost with them while I was in treatment and while I was in sober living, and they were all in foster care. I got that time back. God restored the time that I lost with them. And it was amazing.
God is on your side. So
I know, right?
Always has.
I know.
He always has been. Can you share some examples of things you have been able to do in recovery that otherwise would not have been possible? Vacations, getting your kids back.
Right. It's the little things that are really amazing. I'm able to drive a car without being afraid of being pulled over. I have a valid license, being able to work and earn money and have a good job, not even just some minimum wage, kind of job. Being able to go to an office every day and have a purpose for being there and be in management and, have these things and work and earn my money and pay taxes. There was many years went by that I was just not a tax-paying citizen, So being able to do that and provide for my family and make sure that they have the food to eat that they need, that they have new shoes when their feet grow, are all things that I would never have been able to do otherwise.
What have you learned from active addiction?
What have I learned from active addiction? That life is short, that not to take for granted any moment of my life after losing so many years to drugs and to alcohol, just to be mindful of every moment and appreciate all the good things and to focus on those good things.
Do you have any words of hope that you would like to share with someone that's trying to get sober?
Hope is the most important thing. When we have hope, it keeps us motivated. It keeps us striving to do better. I draw my hope from God Himself. I draw my hope from the very first program of spiritual recovery to my Creator, which is through Jesus Christ. I draw my hope from the Word of God, and I try to share that with as many people as I can, that Jesus came because God so loved us. He came to die for us so that we wouldn't perish but have everlasting life. He tells us that He is the way, the truth, and the life. And if we just focus on Him, we can be healed, we can be delivered, we can be set free, and no longer will the bondage of addiction or the bondage of alcohol have a hold on us. The Bible tells us that when the Son sets us free, we are free indeed. And that gives me a place of confidence to operate from, where I don't have to think, am I recovered? No, I am recovered. Because when I'm set free by the Son, I'm free. And that's all there is to that. And then I can move forward.
So, is there anything else that I didn't ask you? Anything else you want to share at all? Or did I ask you everything?
Open-ended questions. Nice, Amber. We could be here a while. No, I just appreciate having all these opportunities just to speak and to share and to spread hope. We have an epidemic of drugs and alcohol and death that plagues our cities that we see in the news, and we see these statistics, and we see this last year that 138 people in this county died of overdose. But when God steps in, He is the bigger epidemic, and that's the epidemic of hope that my mission is to share, that there is a way out of addiction, there is a way out of drugs and alcohol. We don't have to be wrapped up in that cycle. If I can do it, absolutely anybody can. If God chose to save me, one of the worst, He will absolutely choose to save anyone. He's there for us all.
Well, thank you so much for the show.
Amen.
I really appreciate you and your story. It's going to help so many people.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.